Mike McAllister is joining us, Steve. He has a huge commitment announcement to make for Wednesday. Mike, what commitment has been made for Wednesday that pertains to Orange Nation?
I'm going to invoke LeBron James and say I am taking my talents to downtown Syracuse to the Cuse Nation or Orange Nation radio show.
That's right. He's filling in for Steve and Fonte.
I love it. This is the first I'm hearing of it.
Me,
That's awesome.
him, and Phil Steele will be joining us also. We'll be talking lots of football.
Nothing wrong with that. Always good to talk football.
Yeah.
Just don't do too good of a job, Mike.
I bet you he's going to be my Don McPherson.
Yeah, that's
right?
okay. That's
working
fair.
with him more.
I'll throw a couple segments for you, Steve.
All right, I appreciate that. That's great. I get the day off, and you guys are in good hands. And so now I don't have to feel guilty now, Paulie.
Yeah, the chat is all ready for a big Wally Pip. Big Wally Pip moment.
Well, that's great. I appreciate you filling in, Mike. Thank you for that. Let's start with the women's lacrosse news. I know we're having you on to talk some football. We'll get to that. But, we started the show talking about, two commitments decommitting over the weekend, including Alexa Spallina. Some people are upset about this. Some people are concerned. Is there any reason to be concerned in your mind? I mean, what's kind of your take on what happened over the weekend?
Well, take the Spallina name out of it for a minute and just kind of take a step back and look at what happened. You had two elite five-star caliber recruits that are in your state that have been committed to you for quite a while, who have flipped to go to a program several states away with no history when you're supposed to be an elite program. That, to me, would be concerning just looking at that narrative, so to speak. Now, here's the other thing. Those two players were never going to be the only players in Syracuse's class. They were going to get a bunch of other players, very likely very highly rated other players. And when you miss on recruits, sometimes you can fill that void by getting really good transfers to come in as well with the transfer portal. So I don't think it means the sky is falling. I do think that there should be some level of concern that you're losing two of the better recruits that Kayla Trainer has had in her time as head coach that are flipping. I also think it tells you that Clemson is serious about women's lacrosse, that they are investing in women's lacrosse, because I don't believe these flips happen without some sort of NIL situation in place over there. And so I think you have to look at Clemson as a team that within a few years could be a serious contender in the ACC.
All right. And then, you said take the last name out of it. And I love your answer there, but we got to put the last name back into it. Do you read into this? Like, does this have anything to do with what happened at the end of last year? Obviously, her dad was very upset with the way Stony Brook was treated during the NCAA tournament. Do you think that was in play at all here, or is this strictly, NIL related? And was that a non-factor?
I tried to find out from my limited lacrosse sources to see if I could find anything out. I couldn't one way or the other. So I think it would be unfair for me to say that played a part, and unfair to Joe Spallina and the Stony Brook program to say that. Here's the thing. He knows that his sons are at Syracuse and they're playing at the men's program. He knows that because of his relationship with them, and at the time, I believe his daughter was committed to Syracuse. So because of all of those family connections to Syracuse, he has to know that criticizing Syracuse in some capacity is going to hold a little more weight than if that was Wagner coming to Syracuse and criticizing the facilities or the setup or the situation. So I have to take that as he was being a head coach of his players and protecting his players and what he thought was unfair to his players, and that is separate from when he is evaluating or trying to navigate his children through the recruiting process. Just because I don't have any information to say otherwise, I don't think it's fair to him to speculate that that's the case.
All right, fair enough. All right, let's move on to football now. And Syracuse picking up a 3-star commitment, wide receiver Gabe Daniels. What can you tell us about Gabe?
The most interesting thing I think about him is he's listed as a wide receiver on every recruiting website that you go to. But he's coming to Syracuse with the chance to play wide receiver, but I almost think that he may end up at cornerback. And that's something that Fran Brown talked to him about during the recruiting process, which is, I think that you have all of the tools with your speed, with your length, and everything else to be an elite, immediate contributor at corner. And so that decision won't officially be made until he actually arrives and goes through, the training camp process and all the workouts and everything else. But I think there is a real chance that he ends up in the secondary. The fact that he's another one of these guys that has the decent size at 6'1", 6'2", and is another one of these guys who also runs track and has some really good fast times, I think just kind of goes right in line with what Fran Brown recruits and what he likes and what he looks for. And then, of course, you beat out several other Power 5 or Power 4 schools, including his finalists, NC State and Kansas. So good recruiting win for Syracuse, and I think one that they needed after the news of the decommitments came out earlier that day.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about, who he picked Syracuse over. So you said NC State was on the list. What are some of the other schools that were after him?
The main other one was Kansas. He released the top 3 of Syracuse, NC State, and Kansas in early May. He had official visits scheduled to all 3 of those schools. Right after he finished his Syracuse official, he canceled his visit to NC State. And so at that point, there was some speculation, well, is he going to then cancel Kansas as well and just commit to Syracuse and get it done with? But he didn't. He ended up taking his visit to Kansas, and those were really the 2 schools when he was going into his announcement. But NC State was technically there as a finalist as they were in his final 3.
All right, so they pick up that commitment. Any other potential commitments on the horizon here that we should know about?
July 5th, there is a defensive lineman, Elijah Crawford, who is making his announcement. He officially visited Syracuse, Rutgers, and West Virginia. I think Syracuse has a real shot to land him. And then July 13th is the other one, which is 4-star edge C.J. May, who took an official visit to Syracuse. He's the one that posted the pictures of himself with Nick Williams in that fancy vehicle that they were driving around campus. He also took an official visit to Louisville this month and has taken one previously to Washington. Virginia Tech was also involved. But this seems to come down to a 2-horse race, Syracuse versus Louisville. The rumblings behind the scene are that Louisville has a slight edge at this moment. There is a crystal ball prediction in for him to commit to Louisville. But if there's one thing I've learned about Fran Brown, if Fran Brown really wants someone, I'm not going to rule out him changing that player's mind between now and then. So that's coming July 13th for C.J. May.
Mike, we talk a lot about expectations here, especially this time of year, with the football program. And I know that there's a lot of these, way too early bowl projections that are out there. Mm-hmm. When you look at this first year for Fran Brown, is any bowl game a success? Like if they were to go, in your mind, if they go 6-6 and get to a bowl game, or have the expectations, has the bar been raised before he's even coached a game here? I guess what would be a successful season in your mind?
I think they've raised. I think if they went 6-6, you'd have a large portion of the fan base that would be very disappointed with that. And I think it would sort of give all of the buzz that he has created with the off-season acquisitions and the things that he said and the recruiting and all of that. I think all of that would go away if they go 6-6. It would say, okay, well, you did all these things. We got Ohio State starting quarterback, Texas A&M starting defensive lineman that Alabama wanted, and what did it do? It got us back to the same exact spot that we were in, which is we're barely 500. So I think there's some disappointment. I think if you get to 8-9 wins or above, I think most people would consider that a really good first year for Fran Brown.
And I do want to ask you about Kyle McCord in particular. A lot of these ACC predictions are out, not just about teams, but individual players as well. And I'm seeing some rankings that, McCord is like the 9th best quarterback in the ACC, the 7th best quarterback in the ACC. Do you feel like he's flying under the radar? Do you feel like he's being disrespected here a little bit, or is that about where he is in the pecking order? Is he a middle-of-the-road ACC quarterback?
I don't think he's a middle-of-the-road ACC quarterback. This is a guy who went 11-1 last year as a starter, and his only loss was to the undefeated national champions. in a close game, mind you. And his completion percentage is good. His touchdown to interception ratio is good. Now, people can say all they want about, well, yeah, but he's not quite a national championship level quarterback, et cetera. You can say that, and to date he hasn't proven otherwise. That said, you're putting him behind like the quarterback at Cal that went like 5-7 last year or something. You know, I mean, that's what people are putting him behind. And I think there is this narrative that because he didn't lead Ohio State to the playoffs last year, that must mean he stinks. And I think that is very much understating what Kyle McCord is. I think that is a little bit disrespectful. I hope he sees that and plays with a chip on his shoulder this year as a result, because I think he's much better than that.
Mike, moving over to basketball really quick. Saw that Ryder Frost, is that his name? That might be one of the cooler names I've seen in a while. Did he have a visit to Syracuse? And what's his where's he leaning? Do you know?
I don't think there's any indication he's close to a decision, but I think the fact that, Syracuse offered him this spring, they offered him after watching him during some AAU ball and said, yep, that guy has really improved from where he was, and extended an offer. And then they were able to get him up on a visit one of the first weekends without AAU ball. So that tells you that they prioritized getting him up on campus as much as just about anyone else that they were recruiting. And but yeah, he's got a fantastic name. I think it's perfect for up here, especially. You get Frost in Central New York. I mean, that's perfect. And he's a really good player that has a bunch of high majors after him. So good for Syracuse to get him up on a visit. There's no indication that he's closing in on a decision or that something is imminent. But, I think Syracuse has made a good early impression from the point when they've extended the offer.
I know there are some rumblings about potentially an overseas player coming in for next year. Are you hearing anything that Syracuse is close to bringing in, one more guy to fill one of those scholarships?
I've heard those same rumblings, and I've tried to get more information. And so the fact that I haven't means one of two things. Either it was sort of wishful thinking that developed into a rumor, or there's something to it and they don't want to say anything until, they can make an official announcement, because they're afraid that if whoever this name is gets out, that means other schools are going to try to convince them to take a visit before making a decision, and then everything gets thrown up in the air. So I don't have any information either way, but nothing would surprise me in the world of recruiting.
Yeah, makes sense. Last one from me is just in regards to Judah Mintz. I don't think anybody was really surprised that he didn't get drafted, but, here it is several days later, and he still doesn't have a Summer League roster spot. Are you surprised that he hasn't, signed as an undrafted free agent with somebody to this point?
Yes. I mean, there are several players that I saw very quickly either sign an undrafted free agent contract or summer league contract, et cetera, that are not nearly as good as Judah Mintz is. Now, the NBA game is such that shooting is definitely prioritized. I saw the kid from Oakland who had the fantastic game against Kentucky in the NCAA tournament. He's a one-trick pony. He can shoot, can't do much else, and he will tell you that. Judah Mintz is a much better player overall than that kid. But that kid got a summer league option right away, and Judah Mintz doesn't. Now, does that mean that Judah Mintz hasn't had opportunities and just hasn't signed anything or didn't like those opportunities? We don't know that yet, but it does seem very odd to me that he hasn't at least found a spot as an undrafted free agent, as a two-way situation, or a summer league spot. It's very surprising to me. I think that everyone thought that he would be one of the guys that was prioritized as soon as the draft was over.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm surprised as well. Mike, thank you for the time. We look forward to having you in here on Wednesday, and we appreciate it. Again, remember, don't do too good of a job, but do just good enough that you can fill in. But don't take my job, okay?
Like I said, I'll throw a couple of segments for you. I'll put some Philadelphia Eagles talk in there. That'll rile everyone up.
I love it. All right, Mike, you're the man. Thanks for coming on. We'll see you Wednesday.
He has very tiny shoes to fill, little baby shoes.